أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. Today, my dear brothers and sisters, is the day of Ashura. This is the afternoon of Ashura, when a journey came to its end that began when Imam Hussein found that he had no peace and no security in the sanctuary of Islam, in the city of the Prophet, in the sanctuary wherein Imam Hussein's entire life and family and the grave of his grandfather and the grave of his beloved mother and brother lay. And as he bid farewell to them in Medina, the Imam knew that he was going towards martyrdom, and he had made a covenant and he was ready for that sacrifice. But imagine that when a person loses a single member of their family, a loved one, that loss overwhelms a person's soul. And Imam Hussein, he lost his entire family in the space of just a few hours. We mourn over 10 nights. And we mention the martyrdom of those heroes of Karbala every night. But all of those sacrifices and all of those martyrdoms, they took place on this day, the day of Ashura, when there was a battle unlike any other battle seen in the history of humanity. An old man like Muslim ibn Awsaja, who could barely walk straight, fought against thousands of soldiers. And a boy like Qasim, the beloved son of Imam Hasan, whom even the enemy said that when he came to us to do battle, we didn't know whether it was a human being or whether the moon itself had come down to earth in its beauty and its innocence. A boy so young that no armor would fit him, and so he had nothing to defend himself from the thousands of weapons of the enemy, but a cloth turban and a cloak that he wore. All of those sacrifices, it was on the day of Ashura that they were offered in the path of Allah. And those who went first to the battlefield, that was a mercy for them, that they left the suffering of this world and went to heaven, to their eternal abode. But those who remained, they had to watch as each hero went forth to the battlefield, and they felt every blow on their own soul and on their own body. And then they had to watch as those massacred in the battlefield were brought back to the tent, and as widows and as orphans saw the bodies of their loved ones and bid farewell, suppressing their tears and saying words of gratitude to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How many times on the day of Ashura did Imam Hussein say, Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi raji'un, ridan biqada'ihi wa tasliman li amrih. How many times did Imam Hussein on the day of Ashura, min al-mu'minina rijalun sadaqu ma ahadu Allah alayh. Among the believers are those who hold firm to the covenant they made to Allah. فَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ قَضَى نَحْبَهُ وَمِنْهُمْ مَنْ يَنْتَظِرُ وَمَا بَدَّلُوا تَبْدِيلًا. Some have gone forth to their eternal abode, and some yet wait, but none have changed from the path that they have set upon and the covenant they made to their Lord. It was as if Imam Hussein himself were martyred 72 times on Ashura. But when his companions had offered their sacrifice, and now it was just the members of Banu Hashim who were left, you can imagine that the Imam, before he could allow anyone to go to the battlefield, would contrast the scene before him as every member of Banu Hashim competed with the other to be allowed to go to the battlefield first. He would have compared that scene with just the last night, the eve of Ashura, when his beloved brother Abbas would have gathered all of his nephews, and he would have said that it is for tomorrow that I have trained you. I have taught you all of the lessons of martial arts and defense and how to attack, and the lessons of courage that I learned from my own father. Tomorrow is the day to show the world that you learned to fight from the heir of Amir al-Mu'mineen, that your teacher was Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. And even though they were preparing for battle and for death and for martyrdom, every one of those young heroes had a calm in their heart and a smile on their face and an eagerness. And today Imam Hussein, he saw the face of Ali Akbar, the face of the face of Muhammad, the face of Qasim, the face of the sons of al-Baneen. And he said, truly, are you going to bid me farewell? Are you going to leave me alone? And one by one they went to the battlefield, and they fought, and they fell in battle. And Imam Hussein and Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas brought each body back to the tent until there were no warriors left but the Imam and Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. And here begins the most painful farewells of the day of Ashura. All of the difficulty of the day of Ashura until that point on one side. And then when Imam Hussein gives the command to Abu al-Fadl that before you go to the Euphrates, go to Lady Zainab and bid her farewell. The Imam knew that as he sent Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas for water, it would not be water that would be brought back to the tents. And so when Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas went to bid farewell, Lady Zainab, what could she say? Except to say that from childhood I was told that I would be made a captive, that my scarf would be taken from me, that my hands and my feet would be tied. Abbas, ever since you grew up, I could not imagine how anyone would dare to commit such a crime against me. Abbas, as I bid farewell to you, I bid farewell to my freedom. I bid farewell to my peace of mind. I bid farewell to my scarf. I bid farewell to my safety. Go, Abbas, answer the call of your Imam. And then there was the scene when Imam Hussein bid farewell to Abbas. But this was the time when Abbas had already been struck. He had no hands, and there was a wound that had filled his eyes with blood. And as he lay in the lap of his Imam, he said that, "O Master, I have but one dying request. If you could remove the blood from my eyes, that as I leave this world, I can gaze upon your face one last time." And if Abbas were able to see the Imam in those final moments, I don't know if he would recognize that same brother that he had spent a life with. Because the Imam himself said that, "O Abbas, now my back is broken, and I have nowhere to turn. And as I look at my enemy, they are celebrating my misfortune." And then the Imam bid farewell to his sister Zainab. There were many memories that they would have exchanged in those final moments. Perhaps the will and the testament of Lady Fatima and Amir al-Mu'mineen, as they had foretold for their children this moment. And then the Imam's instruction to Lady Zainab, that until now I have looked after the safety of our caravan. I have consoled widows and orphans. Zainab, when I bid farewell to you, it is for you to be Hussein, and it is for you to be Abbas, and it is for you to be the guardian, and for you to be the protector, and for you to be the consoler, and for you to be the caretaker. And then Imam Hussein and Lady Zainab together went to Imam Zain al-Abidin, sick and semi-conscious. The Imam roused his son and said, "O my son, I have come to bid you farewell." With difficulty, the Imam supported himself and lifted his head and opened his eyes. And perhaps he would have said, "Father, is that truly you before me? How many years have I slept that you have aged so much?" The Imam said, "O my son, I entrust to you the leadership and the imamat of the Muslim Ummah. I bid you farewell." Here Imam Zain al-Abidin began asking questions that were like fresh wounds in the heart of Imam Hussein. "Father, you are bidding farewell to go to the enemy. Where is Abbas? Will my brother Ali Akbar not defend you? Are Ona Muhammad not there for you?" The Imam said, "O my son, there remain none but you and I." And it is said that Imam Zain al-Abidin turned to his aunt. He said, "O my aunt Zainab, bring me a staff that I may lead, and a sword. And the Imam said, what will you do, O my son? He said, you are the only living grandson of a prophet on the face of the earth. It is my obligation to lay down my life for you. And the Imam said, oh my son, you will do jihad. But you will do a jihad even more difficult than my battle on the battlefield. You will do jihad in the court of the tyrant of Kufa and in the court of the tyrant of Damascus. Your jihad is yet to come. And one final farewell. When a young daughter came running to the Imam and said, oh my father, don't go to the battlefield, because all who have gone have not come back alive. And the Imam said that, oh my daughter, I enjoin you to be patient. When tears come to your eyes, then dry them, so your Aunt Zainab will not see, because your grief will only add to her burden. That daughter, wise beyond her age of 4 years, promised to Imam Hussein that she would not express her grief. But she said that when Muslim ibn Aqil died, you showed mercy to my cousin, as is shown to an orphan. Father, although you are still alive, put your hand on my head and hug me, because I too shall soon be an orphan. The Imam bid farewell to Lady Saki, and he went to the battlefield, already wounded, already having suffered so much, more thirsty than anyone else. And yet, history tells us that now when the Imam faced the enemy, one man against thousands, wherever he would go, they would flee before him like sheep before a predator, or like locusts that would scatter in the wind. The Imam did battle alone against hundreds, and they would not dare to come near him, until at one point some of the enemy soldiers came between him and the camp, and Shimr gave a command to attack the camp of the survivors, the women and the children. And the Imam stood up and he said, Ya Shi'ata Ali Abi Sufyan, in lam yakun lakum dinun wa kuntum la takhafun al-ma'ad, فَكُونُوا أَحْرَارًا فِي دُنْيَاكُمْ. O followers of Abu Sufyan and Muawiyah, O soldiers of Yazid, if you do not have piety, then at least be honorable in your worldly life. Do not attack my family so long as I live. And then, like a lion, the Imam made one attack that took him to the thick of the enemy soldiers. He fought and scattered them before him, but they surrounded him from all sides. And Umar ibn Sa'd gave the command that this is the son of Imam Ali, this is the heir of the conqueror of Khaybar, this is the heir of the hero of the battle of Khandaq. You will not be able to do battle with him. You cannot succeed in defeating him by honorable means. Those who are afar, all of you shoot your arrows together towards Hussein. Those who have spears, aim your spears all together towards Hussein. Those of you who have no other weapon, find stones and bricks and throw them towards Hussein. The Imam was able to repel the enemy from the tent of his women and children. But now he was surrounded by thousands of weapons aiming for his body, and still he fought bravely, such that the enemy soldiers said, "We never saw someone so wounded, so harshly suffering, fight so bravely," until one enemy soldier who hid behind a tree reached out and from behind the Imam hit him with an axe on his head, a blow that made it difficult for the Imam to steady himself on his horse. He leaned down and took out a part of his cloak to clear the blood from his face. And as the Imam leaned, now the enemy soldiers came, one by one with their swords. They took aim at the Imam and attacked him from behind. And when he was no longer able to steady himself on his horse, he fell to the ground, saying, "Bismillah wa billah wa ala millati Rasulillah." It is said in history that the Imam was so heavily injured that when he fell to the ground, the first thing that made contact with the ground were the arrows that were lodged in his body. And then it was his head which fell to the ground. The Imam was now on the sands of Karbala, and the enemy surrounded him from all sides. But although the Imam was no longer in a position to fight, and he was preparing for his final sujood and putting his head in prostration, the enemy did not dare to move forward. Umar ibn Sa'd would try to convince one soldier after another to go and end the battle. And they would take steps forward. But whether it was the sight of the Imam in ibadah, or whether it was the sound of a woman crying, they stayed back until it was Shimr who said that I will go. And now there were only the most wretched of those soldiers who dared to come forward. Sinan ibn Anas came, and he struck a blow on the head of the Imam that caused the hands of the Imam to fill with his blood. And the Imam cupped that blood in his hands, and he put it on his head and on his body, and said, "O Allah, I will come to you on the day of judgment, covered in my own blood." And other enemy soldiers shot an arrow that lodged itself in the chest of the Imam. And the Imam removed that arrow from behind his back. And now the Imam's body began to weaken. He looked towards the tent, and in a weak voice that was carried to the ears of Zainab only by the insight of the heart, he bid his final farewell and bade them to have strength, as the time for captivity had come. And as the Imam put his head on the sand in gratitude and in prostration, one wretched soldier stepped forward, and he drew his sword above his head. And Lady Zainab had come out of her tent, and she was looking upon that scene. And a lady who would never address Umar ibn Sa'd in any other circumstances, in her desperation and in her grief, she called out to Umar ibn Sa'd, "O Umar, will my brother be martyred while you watch?" And even Umar ibn Sa'd could not watch that scene as Shimr stepped forward with a sword drawn, and as Shimr put his foot on the back of Imam Hussein, and as he drew his sword, and as he struck one blow after another, even the enemy could not bear to watch. But Lady Zainab saw, and she looked towards the heaven, and she called out to her grandfather, "Wa Muhammada, wa Aliya, wa Fatimata, wa Hasana, hada Husayn bil-Ara, murammal bid-dima, muqatta' al-a'dha." Oh my beloved grandfather Muhammad, how can I bear to see this scene? Your beloved Hussein lies before me in Karbala, covered in blood and sand, his limbs separated from his body, and I see the foot of Shimr upon the body of my Hussein. Inna lillah wa inna ilayhi.